I don't want any kids, but after one night, the Playboy millionaire was forced to be a father. Part 2. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Love in Chapters. If you are just joining us on this beautiful story, I think you should check out the Part 1 first, because trust me, you'll love it. And if you're already coming from the Part 1, let me know in the comments section where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you enjoy the story, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this story with your fellow story lovers. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. The penthouse had never felt quite so oppressive as it did on that first night with Tyrone West living in it. Damien stood in his expansive living room, a space that had always felt like the epitome of bachelor sophistication with its leather furniture, modern art, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, and felt completely out of his depth. Tyrone sat on the edge of the pristine white sofa, his small frame dwarfed by the expensive furniture, his backpack still clutched in his hands as if he might need to make a quick escape at any moment. The boy hadn't said a word since they'd left the hospital. Not in the car ride home, not in the elevator up to the penthouse, not when Damien had shown him to his room, and not now, as they sat in awkward silence with the weight of unspoken grief and resentment hanging between them like a physical presence. Damien cleared his throat, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the quiet space. "Are you hungry? I could order something. Pizza? Chinese? Whatever you want." Silence. Tyrone's eyes remained fixed on some point on the floor, his jaw clenched tight, his glasses slightly fogged from the tears he'd shed earlier, but was now stubbornly holding back. "Okay," Damien said, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration and uncertainty. "Well, if you get hungry, just let me know. The kitchen is, well, I'll show you where everything is. Not that there's much. I don't really cook, so..." "I'm not hungry," Tyrone said, his voice flat and cold, and those were the only words he would speak for the rest of the evening. Damien tried everything he could think of. He showed Tyrone around the penthouse, pointing out the various rooms with the kind of awkward enthusiasm usually reserved for awkward first dates. "The gym. You can use it whenever you want, though I'm not sure if you're into working out. The entertainment room. I've got pretty much every streaming service, and the gaming system is top of the line. The gourmet kitchen. Like I said, I don't cook, but there's stuff in there if you know how to make anything." Tyrone followed him through the tour like a ghost, his expression never changing, his silence never breaking, except for that one flat statement about not being hungry. When they finally returned to the living room, Damien felt exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness and everything to do with emotional drain. He'd faced hostile boardrooms, aggressive investors, cutthroat competitors, but nothing had prepared him for the soul-crushing experience of being completely ignored by a grieving 12-year-old. "Look," Damien finally said, sitting down on the coffee table across from where Tyrone had resumed his position on the sofa. "I know this is hard. I know you don't want to be here. I know you'd rather be anywhere else, with anyone else. And I know you probably hate me right now." Tyrone's eyes flickered briefly to Damien's face before returning to their fixed point on the floor. But it was enough to tell Damien that the boy was at least listening. "But we're in this situation together," Damien continued, trying to find the right words, the right tone, the right approach to reach this hurting child. "And I'm going to do my best to make it as okay as possible until your mom wakes up. Because she will wake up, Tyrone. The doctors are optimistic, and..." "Please stop talking," Tyrone interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of absolute finality. And that was it. That was all he would say. The rest of the evening passed in excruciating silence. Damien ordered pizza anyway. thinking maybe the smell would tempt Tyrone to eat, but the boy took 2 slices to his room and presumably ate them there, because he didn't emerge again for the rest of the night. Damien sat alone in his living room, surrounded by the trappings of his successful, independent, commitment-free life, and felt more lonely than he'd ever felt in his entire existence. The penthouse that had always been his sanctuary, his refuge from the demands and expectations of the world, now felt like a prison, and he was trapped in it with a child who looked at him like he was a monster. Which, Damien supposed, he kind of was. He'd hit the boy's mother with his car, he'd put her in a coma, he'd destroyed this child's world in a single moment of distraction and carelessness. And now he was supposed to somehow make it better? To be this kid's guardian? To fill the role of parent when he'd spent his entire adult life running from anything that even resembled that kind of responsibility? Damien pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long moment before pulling up Laura's contact. It was late, past 10 o'clock, and she was probably putting her kids to bed or settling in for the evening with her husband Marcus. But he needed advice, needed guidance, needed someone to tell him what the hell he was supposed to do. The phone rang 3 times before Laura answered, her voice slightly breathless. "Damien, is everything okay? Did something happen with, how do you talk to a kid who won't talk to you?" Damien interrupted, not bothering with pleasantries. There was a brief pause, and he could practically hear Laura's expression shift from concern to understanding. "Ah, so Tyrone's giving you the silent treatment? He said maybe 5 words to me total since we left the hospital. He won't eat with me, won't talk to me, just sits there looking at me like I'm the worst person who ever lived." "You did hit his mother with your car," Laura pointed out, her tone gentle but matter-of-fact. "I know that," Damien snapped, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, I know, I don't know what to do here, Laura. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it," Laura said simply. "You can't make his mother not be in a coma. You can't undo what happened, and you can't force him to forgive you or trust you or even like you. So what am I supposed to do? Just let him hate me?" "You give him space," Laura explained, her voice taking on the patient tone she used with her own children when they were upset. "You be consistent. You show up. You prove through your actions that you're not going anywhere, that you're going to be there for him whether he talks to you or not. And eventually, when he's ready, he'll come around. And if he doesn't, then you keep showing up anyway," Laura said firmly. "That's what being a parent is, Damien. It's not about being liked or appreciated. It's about being present and reliable, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when you feel like you're failing miserably." Damien leaned back against the sofa, his eyes drifting to the hallway where Tyrone's closed door was visible. "I don't think I can do this." "You can," Laura assured him. "And you will, because you're not the selfish playboy you pretend to be. You're better than that. You always have been. You just need to finally believe it yourself." After hanging up with Laura, Damien sat in the darkness of his living room for a long time, thinking about her words, about showing up, about being consistent, about proving himself through actions rather than words. The next morning came too early, announced by the insistent beeping of his alarm at 6:30. Damien groaned, reaching blindly for his phone to silence the offensive noise. He'd never been a morning person, had actively avoided being one his entire adult life, and the early hour felt like a personal attack on his well-being. He was about to roll over and go back to sleep when he remembered Tyrone, school, responsibility. With a groan that came from the depths of his soul, Damien dragged himself out of bed and shuffled toward the bathroom. He looked like death warmed over in the mirror, hair sticking up in every direction, eyes bloodshot and bleary, stubble darkening his jaw. He splashed cold water on his face, brushed his teeth, and tried to make himself look somewhat presentable. When he emerged from his bedroom 20 minutes later, dressed in casual clothes rather than his usual business attire, he found Tyrone already awake, sitting at the kitchen island with a bowl of cereal in front of him. The boy was fully dressed in his school uniform, his backpack beside him on the floor, his glasses perched on his nose as he mechanically spooned cereal into his mouth while staring at nothing. "Morning," Damien offered, his voice still rough with sleep. Tyrone didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge that Damien had spoken. Damien poured himself a cup of coffee from the automatic machine, the only thing in his kitchen that got regular use, and tried to figure out what to say. Small talk seemed inappropriate. Questions about school seemed intrusive. Everything he could think of felt wrong. "I'll drive you to school," he finally settled on, taking a sip of the hot coffee and feeling marginally more human. Tyrone continued eating in silence, and Damien took that as acceptance of the arrangement. The drive to Riverside Middle School was quiet except for the soft sound of jazz playing from the car's sound system, one of Damien's sports cars, a sleek Lamborghini that cost more than most people's houses. Damien had never thought much about his choice of vehicle before, had never considered how it might be perceived or what it might communicate. But as they pulled up to the school and he saw the other cars in the drop-off line, practical sedans, minivans, a few older model SUVs, he suddenly felt ridiculously conspicuous. This wasn't the kind of car a parent drove to school drop-off. This was the kind of car a Playboy drove to impress women and intimidate business rivals. Tyrone gathered his backpack and opened the door without a word, but before he could step out, Damien found himself saying, "Hey, I'll pick you up at 3:30, okay? Right here." The boy paused, and for a moment Damien thought he might actually respond. But then Tyrone just nodded, the smallest, most minimal acknowledgement possible, and climbed out of the car. Damien watched as Tyrone walked toward the school building, his shoulders hunched, his steps slow. And then something happened that made Damien's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Other kids, students arriving for school, stopped and stared as Tyrone emerged from the Lamborghini. Their eyes widened, their mouths forming small O's of surprise. A few of them pointed. Damien could see them whispering to each other, could see the way they looked at Tyrone with new eyes. Tyrone West, the shy kid with glasses who usually went unnoticed, had just arrived at school in a car that cost more than their parents' annual salaries. For a moment, Tyrone seemed to stand a little straighter, seemed to walk with a bit more confidence. And despite everything, despite the silence, despite the resentment, despite the impossible situation they were in, Damien felt a small spark of satisfaction. Maybe he couldn't give Tyrone his mother back. Maybe he couldn't undo the accident or erase the pain, but he could give the kid this, a moment of feeling special, of being noticed, of standing out in a positive way for once. It wasn't much, but it was something. That evening, after a long day at the office where Damien had tried and failed to focus on anything other than the fact that he was now responsible for another human being's well-being, he picked Tyrone up from school at exactly 3:30. The boy was waiting at the designated spot, his face carefully neutral as he climbed into the car. "How was school?" Damien asked, pulling back into traffic. Silence. "Learn anything interesting?" More silence. Damien tried a few more conversational gambits. Each one met with the same wall of quiet resistance, before finally giving up. They drove home in uncomfortable quiet, the jazz music filling the space where conversation should have been. This pattern continued for the next several days. Damien would wake up early, an act that felt like physical torture each morning, and drive Tyrone to school. He'd pick him up in the afternoon. He'd order takeout for dinner, because he couldn't cook to save his life, and the kitchen intimidated him almost as much as the silent child living in his home. They'd eat separately, Tyrone in his room, Damien in the living room, and then retreat to their separate spaces for the evening. It was lonely and awkward, and emotionally exhausting in ways that Damien had never experienced before. He'd thought running a multi-million-dollar company was stressful. He'd thought navigating hostile board meetings and aggressive takeover attempts was challenging. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the soul-crushing difficulty of living with a child who refused to acknowledge your existence. On the fourth day, Damien called Laura again, this time during his lunch break, sitting in his corner office with the city sprawling beneath him and feeling like the loneliest man alive. "It's not getting better," he told her without preamble. "If anything, it's getting worse. He won't talk to me at all. He barely eats. He just sits in his room doing homework or reading or whatever kids do when they're avoiding the person they live with." "It's been 4 days, Damien," Laura said patiently. "Healing takes time. Trust takes time. You can't expect him to just get over what happened and embrace you as a father figure after less than a week." "I'm not expecting him to embrace me as anything," Damien protested. "I'd just settle for him acknowledging that I exist, or maybe saying more than 2 words to me." "Have you tried just talking to him? Really talking? Not just asking how school was or making small talk? What am I supposed to say? Sorry I hit your mom with my car, want to be friends?" "Maybe start with the sorry part," Laura suggested, "and actually mean it. Kids can tell when you're being sincere and when you're just going through the motions." That evening, Damien decided to take Laura's advice. After picking Tyrone up from school and enduring another silent car ride home, after ordering Chinese food and watching Tyrone take his portion to his room without a word, Damien stood outside the boy's closed door and gathered his courage. He knocked, waited for a response that didn't come, and then knocked again. "Tyrone? Can I come in?" Silence, but not a refusal. Damien took that as permission and opened the door. Tyrone's room looked different than it had just a few days ago. The boy had unpacked his belongings. Not many, just a few changes of clothes, some books, a soccer ball, a poster of some sci-fi movie that Damien didn't recognize. It was still sparse, still impersonal, but it was starting to look lived in. Tyrone sat at the desk Damien had hastily purchased, his homework spread out in front of him, his pencil frozen mid-word as he stared determinedly at his paper and refused to look at Damien. "I wanted to talk to you," Damien said, leaning against the doorframe because entering the room fully felt like an invasion. "I know you don't want to hear from me, and I get that, but I need to say some things, and I need you to listen." The pencil remained frozen. The eyes remained fixed on the homework. "I'm sorry," Damien said, and his voice cracked slightly on the words. Emotion he'd been holding back for days, suddenly threatening to overwhelm him. "I'm so sorry about your mom. I was distracted. I was driving too fast. I was focused on my own problems, my own stupid, meaningless problems, and I wasn't paying attention. And because of that, because of my carelessness and selfishness, your mom is in a hospital bed in a coma." He paused, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. "I can't undo it," he continued. "I can't take it back or make it better or fix what I broke. And I know that's what you want. You want me to make your mom wake up, to make everything go back to normal. But I can't do that. All I can do is tell you that I'm sorry and that I'm going to do everything in my power to take care of you until she does wake up." Still silence, but Damien thought he saw Tyrone's shoulders tense slightly, saw his grip on the pencil tighten. "I know you hate me," Damien said quietly, "and you have every right to. I'd hate me too if I were you. But I need you to understand something. The accident wasn't entirely my fault." Now Tyrone did move, his head snapping up, his eyes blazing with sudden fury. "How can you say that? You hit her. You were driving the car that hit my mom. Finally, The silence was broken, even if it was with anger and pain. "I was," Damien agreed, not flinching from the accusation in Tyrone's eyes. "And I take responsibility for that. But your mom, she ran into the street without looking. She ignored the traffic lights. She was so focused on getting to you that she didn't pay attention to the road. We were both at fault, Tyrone. We both made mistakes that led to that moment. Don't you dare blame my mom." Tyrone shot to his feet, his small body practically vibrating with rage. "She was trying to get me. She was running to me. And you were probably on your phone or thinking about some stupid business meeting or—" "You're right," Damien interrupted calmly. "I was on the phone. I was thinking about a business meeting. I was distracted. That's what I just said. I was at fault. But so was she. Two things can be true at the same time, Tyrone. I can be responsible for not paying attention, and she can be responsible for running into traffic. Acknowledging that doesn't mean I don't feel terrible about what happened. It doesn't mean I don't carry guilt about this every single day." Tyrone's hands were balled into fists at his sides, his breathing heavy. His eyes bright with tears he was trying desperately not to shed. "Then why did you even take me? If you feel so guilty, why did you become my guardian?" "Because I couldn't let you go into foster care," Damien said simply. "Why not?" Tyrone challenged. "Why do you care? The first thing you did after becoming my guardian was try to dump me with your parents. I overheard your phone call to them. You obviously don't want me here. You obviously don't want to deal with me. So why not just let them put me in the system and be done with it?" The words hit Damien like physical blows, each one landing with the accuracy of truth. "You're right," he admitted. "I did try to pass you off to my parents, and that was wrong of me. That was cowardly and selfish, and I'm sorry." Tyrone looked surprised by the admission, his anger faltering slightly. "But you want to know why I couldn't let you go into foster care?" Damien continued, his voice taking on a quality of raw honesty that he rarely allowed himself. "Because, like I told you, I know what that's like. I grew up in foster care, Tyrone. My parents died when I was 8, and my sister and I spent years being bounced from home to home. Some of them were okay. Some of them were awful. All of them were temporary, unstable, uncertain." Tyrone's expression had shifted from anger to reluctant interest. "I remember what it felt like," Damien said quietly. "Feeling unwanted, feeling like a burden. Never knowing if the people taking care of you actually cared about you, or if you were just another paycheck to them. Never feeling safe or secure or like you belonged anywhere. And I couldn't let that happen to you, not when I had the power to prevent it." "But you don't know how to be a parent," Tyrone said, and his voice was softer now, less accusing. "You said so yourself." "I don't," Damien agreed. "I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm probably going to mess this up in about 1,000 different ways, but I'm going to try, Tyrone. I'm going to show up every day and try to do right by you, because you deserve that. Because every kid deserves to have someone who gives a damn about them." Tyrone was quiet for a long moment, his anger seeming to deflate, leaving behind only exhaustion and grief. "My mom's going to wake up, right?" The question was asked in such a small, vulnerable voice that Damien felt his heart clench. "The doctors think so," he said honestly. "They're optimistic, but it might take time. And until then, you've got me, which I know isn't what you want, but it's what you've got." Another long silence, and then Tyrone said quietly, "Okay." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't acceptance, it wasn't even really agreement, but it was something. It was a tiny crack in the wall that Tyrone had built between them, and Damien would take it. "Okay," he echoed. "Get some sleep, kid. School tomorrow." As Damien turned to leave, Tyrone's voice stopped him. "Mr. Langston?" Damien turned back. "Yeah, thank you. for not letting them put me in foster care." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Damien nodded, not trusting his voice, and closed the door behind him. It was a small victory, but in that moment, it felt enormous. If Damien thought that one heartfelt conversation would magically transform his relationship with Tyrone, he was quickly disabused of that notion. The silent treatment ended, true to Tyrone's promise. But what replaced it wasn't exactly warm companionship. It was more like coexistence. Polite, distant, carefully neutral coexistence. Tyrone would answer when Damien asked him direct questions. He would say thank you when Damien did things for him. He would participate in minimal necessary communication. But there was no warmth, no real connection, just the bare minimum of interaction required for two people living in the same space. Still, it was better than total silence. And Damien was learning, slowly, painfully, with many mistakes along the way, how to navigate this new reality. The learning curve began in earnest the following weekend. Damien had arranged for a highly recommended nanny service to send someone over, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Grace, who came with glowing references and 20 years of childcare experience. She would stay with Tyrone while Damien went out with Jake and Terry for their weekly bar night, a tradition they'd maintained since college. "You sure about this?" Jake had asked, when Damien called to confirm their plans. "You're really going to leave the kid with a stranger and go out drinking?" "She's not a stranger, she's a professional nanny," Damien had countered. "And I have been stressed out all week. One night out won't kill anyone." Famous last words. The night out had been fine. Good, even. Damien had enjoyed the familiar comfort of the bar, the easy banter with his friends, the freedom of not having to think about bedtimes or homework or whether a 12-year-old was okay. He'd had maybe one too many drinks, stayed out maybe an hour too late, and stumbled home around 2 in the morning feeling pleasantly buzzed and blessedly irresponsible. The next morning was a harsh reminder that his life had fundamentally changed. Damien woke to someone shaking his shoulder insistently, a voice penetrating through the fog of sleep and mild hangover. "Mr. Langston, wake up. We need to leave in 20 minutes, or I'll be late for school." Damien cracked one eye open to find Tyrone standing beside his bed, fully dressed, backpack already on his shoulders, looking down at him with an expression that somehow managed to be both patient and judgmental. "What?" Damien's mouth felt like it was stuffed with cotton. "What time is it?" 7:45, Tyrone said matter-of-factly. "School starts at 8:15. It takes about 20 minutes to drive there with traffic, which means we should have left 10 minutes ago." The words penetrated slowly through Damien's hungover brain. School. Monday. He was supposed to drive Tyrone to school. He'd set an alarm, hadn't he? He reached blindly for his phone and saw the screen covered in dismissed alarm notifications. He'd apparently been hitting snooze in his sleep. "Shoot," he muttered. "Give me 5 minutes. You said that a while ago," Tyrone pointed out. "I've been trying to wake you up for a while now." Damien dragged himself out of bed, his head pounding, his mouth tasting like something had died in it. He stumbled toward the bathroom, brushed his teeth with record speed, splashed water on his face, and finger-combed his hair into something that didn't look like a bird's nest. No time for a shower. No time for proper grooming. He pulled on the first clothes he could find. Jeans that might or might not be clean, a t-shirt that definitely wasn't, a baseball cap to hide his disastrous hair. "Let's go," he said, grabbing his keys. The drive to school was a nightmare. Damien's head throbbed with every red light, his stomach churned with every sharp turn. And Tyrone sat in the passenger seat, silent and disapproving in a way that only a 12-year-old could manage. They pulled up to the school at 8:13, cutting it close but technically still on time. Tyrone gathered his backpack and opened the door, but before he got out, He turned to Damien with an expression that was far too adult for his young face. "Mrs. Grace quit this morning," he said calmly. "She said she had a family emergency and had to go back to her home country. She left a note on the kitchen counter." Damien's stomach dropped. "What? When?" "Around 6 this morning. She packed her things and left before you woke up." "Well, before you finally woke up. Why didn't you tell me this earlier?" Tyrone's expression was remarkably bland. "You were too busy hitting snooze and groaning about your headache to have a conversation. I figured I'd wait until you were conscious." With that, he climbed out of the car and headed toward the school, leaving Damien sitting in the drop-off line with a pounding headache, wrinkled clothes, and the sudden realization that he was now completely, utterly, on his own with a 12-year-old. No nanny, no backup, no safety net, just him and Tyrone, figuring it out as they went. That evening, after a day at the office where Damien had accomplished virtually nothing due to his hangover and growing panic about his childcare situation, he sat at his kitchen island, staring at a variety of takeout menus spread before him like battle plans. Chinese, Italian, Thai, Mexican, pizza, burgers. He'd been ordering takeout for every meal since Tyrone moved in, and he could see the judgment in the boy's eyes every time he presented another cardboard container of food. But what choice did he have? The kitchen, his beautiful, expensive, barely used kitchen, might as well have been a foreign country for all the comfort he felt in it. Damien could barely operate the coffee maker. Cooking actual food, that was so far beyond his capabilities, it wasn't even funny. Damien selected Thai food from the menu rotation and placed the order. When it arrived 45 minutes later, he called out to Tyrone that dinner was ready. The boy emerged from his room, took his portion, and retreated back without a word. It was becoming their routine. Separate meals, separate spaces, minimal interaction. It was lonely. But it was manageable, or so Damien thought, until the following Friday night. He'd made plans weeks ago, before the accident, before Tyrone, before his life had imploded and restructured itself around responsibility, to have dinner with a woman he'd been casually seeing, Claire. Or was it Clara? He couldn't quite remember, which probably said something unflattering about him. The dinner had been fine. Forgettable conversation over expensive wine at an upscale restaurant. But when Claire had suggested they go back to his place for a drink, Damien had agreed without thinking. He'd forgotten about Tyrone. They'd made it through the front door, already kissing. Claire's hands in his hair, his hands on her waist. They'd stumbled toward the living room, laughing and fumbling with buttons, the chemistry between them heating up rapidly. And then, just as Damien was backing Claire onto the sofa, just as things were getting interesting, the lights flipped on with blinding intensity. Damien sprang away from Claire like he'd been electrocuted, his heart pounding, his brain struggling to process what was happening. Tyrone stood by the light switch, dressed in Star Wars pajamas, his glasses slightly askew, looking at them with an expression of wide-eyed innocence that was completely at odds with the knowing glint in his eyes. "Oh, I'm sorry," Tyrone said, his voice carefully modulated to sound younger and more vulnerable than usual. "I didn't know you had company. I couldn't sleep. I was hoping you might read me a bedtime story." Damien stared at the boy, his mind completely blank. "A bedtime story? Yeah, like you promised last week. Remember? You said anytime I had trouble sleeping, you'd read to me." Damien had made no such promise. He'd barely spoken to Tyrone last week, much less made promises about bedtime stories. Claire cleared her throat from the sofa, straightening her clothes, her expression shifting from aroused to uncomfortable. "But you're like 13, Damien said. "Yeah, I know," Tyrone added helpfully, his innocent expression never wavering. but Mom always used to read to me when I couldn't sleep, and since she's in the hospital." His voice hitched perfectly, his eyes glistening with tears that might or might not have been real. And just like that, the mood was completely destroyed. Claire made her excuses. Early meeting tomorrow, busy week coming up, she'd call him sometime, and was out the door within 5 minutes, leaving Damien alone with a 12-year-old boy who was now looking remarkably pleased with himself. "You're 13, Damien said flatly. "You don't need bedtime stories." Tyrone's innocent expression cracked slightly, a small smirk tugging at his lips. Worked though, didn't it? Despite his frustration, Damien found himself fighting a smile. "You little manipulator. If you're going to bring women home," Tyrone said, walking toward his room, "maybe give me a heads up so I can be somewhere else. Some of us are trying to sleep in this penthouse." "Noted," Damien called after him. But the boy had already disappeared into his room, leaving Damien alone in his living room, his evening plans thoroughly derailed. It became a pattern over the next few weeks. Every time Damien tried to bring a date home, and he tried several times, stubborn in his determination not to let his Playboy lifestyle be completely destroyed, Tyrone found a way to ruin it. Sometimes it was the lights on bedtime story routine. Sometimes it was emerging from his room, claiming he'd had a nightmare and needed Damien's comfort. Sometimes it was simply parking himself in the living room with a bowl of popcorn and the loudest cartoon he could find, creating an atmosphere so aggressively child-friendly that any romantic mood was impossible. The women, without exception, made hasty exits, and Damien, despite his initial annoyance, found himself somewhat impressed by Tyrone's dedication to sabotage. After the 4th or 5th ruined evening, Damien stopped trying to bring women home altogether. It was easier, he told himself, more considerate of Tyrone's situation, the responsible thing to do. Definitely not because a 12-year-old had completely outmaneuvered him. Definitely not. 3 months into their arrangement, a routine had emerged. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was functional. Damien woke up early every morning, still hating every second of it. He made sure Tyrone was ready for school. He drove him there, in whichever sports car seemed appropriate for the day. The Mercedes was becoming the default choice, as it was slightly less ostentatious than the Ferrari or Lamborghini. He went to work, tried to focus on running his company, and mostly failed because his mind kept drifting to whether Tyrone had eaten lunch or finished his homework. At 3:30 p.m. sharp, he picked Tyrone up from school. They'd drive home, Damien would order takeout, and they'd eat in their separate spaces before retreating to their own activities for the evening. 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, they went to the hospital to visit Shirley. Those hospital visits were the strangest part of this new routine for Damien. At first, he'd wait in the hallway, while Tyrone spent time with his mother, giving them privacy. But gradually, Damien found himself entering the room, sitting in the chair by the window, while Tyrone held his mother's hand and talked to her about school, about his day, about the little things that made up his life. Shirley West lay still and peaceful in her hospital bed, machines beeping softly, her chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity. The doctors said her brain activity was good, that all signs pointed toward eventual recovery, but there was no timeline, no guarantee, no way to know when or if she would open her eyes. After Tyrone would leave to get a snack from the vending machines or use the bathroom, Damien found himself staying behind, sitting beside Shirley's bed, talking to her even though he knew she couldn't hear him. "He's doing okay," Damien would say quietly, his eyes on her peaceful face. "Tyrone, he's a good kid, smart, funny, even if he doesn't realize it. He's making friends at school, finally. The other kids stopped teasing him about his glasses. I think arriving in a luxury car every day helped with that. He'd pause, as if waiting for a response that would never come. I'm trying my best with him, Damien would continue. I'm probably messing it up in 100 different ways, but I'm trying. He needs his mom though. He needs you. So if you could, wake up whenever you're ready, that would be good. For both of us. These one-sided conversations became therapeutic in a way Damien hadn't expected. There was something about talking to someone who couldn't judge him, couldn't interrupt or criticize or offer unwanted advice. He could be honest with Shirley in a way he couldn't be with anyone else, admitting his fears and insecurities and doubts. And slowly, imperceptibly, Damien's life began to transform around this new reality. The change didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, incremental, built from small moments that accumulated into something larger. It started with a parent-teacher conference that Damien almost didn't attend. "What's the point?" he'd asked Laura on the phone when she'd called to check in. "I'm just his guardian. I don't need to go to these things." "You absolutely do," Laura had insisted. "You're his legal guardian. That makes you responsible for his education. Besides, showing up matters, Damien. It shows Tyrone that you care." So Damien had gone, feeling completely out of place among the actual parents who clearly knew what they were doing. He sat in a too-small chair across from Mrs. Patterson, Tyrone's homeroom teacher, and listened to her talk about Tyrone's grades, excellent, his participation, improving, and his social development, still a work in progress, but showing signs of progress. "He's a bright boy," Mrs. Patterson had said with genuine warmth, "and he speaks very highly of you." "He does?" Damien couldn't hide his surprise. "Oh yes. He told some of his friends about how cool your garage is." Damien had left that conference feeling lighter than he had in months, a small seed of pride taking root in his chest. Tyrone talked about him to his class, spoke highly of him. That had to mean something, didn't it? The shopping trip started after that. Damien noticed that Tyrone's clothes were getting tight. The kid was growing, shooting up like a weed, and his pants were starting to show ankles. "We should get you some new clothes," Damien had said one Saturday morning. "And maybe some other stuff. Whatever you want." Tyrone had looked suspicious at first, probably expecting some kind of catch. But when they'd arrived at the mall, when Damien had told him to pick out whatever he liked within reason, the boy's eyes had lit up with something close to excitement. They spent hours wandering through stores. Tyrone picked out jeans and shirts and sneakers. They stopped at a bookstore where Tyrone spent 30 minutes debating between various science fiction novels before selecting 3. They got ice cream at the food court, sitting across from each other in companionable silence while they ate. It was, Damien realized, the first time they'd really spent time together without the weight of awkwardness or obligation pressing down on them. It was just nice. The shopping trips became a regular thing after that. Sometimes for practical things like clothes or school supplies, sometimes just for fun, books, movies, the occasional video game, and somewhere in those afternoons at the mall, something shifted between them. Tyrone started to relax around Damien, started to smile more easily, started to share little pieces of himself. "I like Star Wars," Tyrone had mentioned casually one afternoon while they were browsing a collectibles store. "Yeah?" Damien had replied, genuinely interested. "Which one's your favorite?" "Empire Strikes Back." Obviously, Damien had agreed, even though he'd never really thought about it before. The original trilogy is classic. Tyrone's face had lit up, and he'd launched into an enthusiastic explanation of why Empire was superior to all other Star Wars films. Damien had listened, genuinely engaged, and before he knew it, they were debating the merits of various scenes, quoting lines at each other, getting weird looks from other shoppers, as they acted out the final lightsaber battle between Luke and Vader. No, you're doing it wrong. Tyrone had laughed, demonstrating the proper stance. You have to hold the imaginary lightsaber like this. Damien had mimicked the stance, feeling ridiculous, and also somehow happier than he'd felt in months. Like this? Better. Now say the line, "I am your father," Damien had intoned in his best Darth Vader voice. No, that's impossible, Tyrone had gasped dramatically, and they'd both dissolved into laughter, this shared moment of silliness creating a bond that hadn't existed before. After that, Star Wars became their thing. They'd quote lines at each other over breakfast. They'd debate character motivations during car rides. Damien bought them matching lightsaber chopsticks that they used for their takeout meals, making whooshing sounds as they ate. It was ridiculous and childish, and completely unlike anything Damien had ever done in his adult life. It was also some of the most fun he'd ever had. The homework help started by accident. Damien had been working in his home office one evening when Tyrone had knocked hesitantly on the door. Mr. Langston, can I ask you something?" "Sure," Damien had said, turning away from his computer. "And you can call me Damien, by the way. Mr. Langston makes me feel ancient." Tyrone had smiled slightly at that. "Okay, Damien, I'm stuck on this math problem, and I don't really understand it. Can you help?" Math had been one of Damien's strengths back in school, and he found himself enjoying the process of breaking down the problem, explaining the concepts, watching understanding dawn on Tyrone's face. "Oh, I get it now. Thanks." "Anytime," Damien had said, and he'd meant it. After that, homework help became part of their evening routine. Sometimes it was math, sometimes it was science. Once, memorably, it was an English essay about symbolism in To Kill a Mockingbird that had led to a 2-hour discussion about justice and morality and standing up for what's right. "You're pretty smart," Tyrone had said at the end of that conversation, and there'd been genuine admiration in his voice. "Thanks, kid. So are you." The soccer revelation happened about 4 months in. Damien had been picking Tyrone up from school when he noticed the boy lingering near the athletic fields, watching the soccer team practice with obvious longing. "You play soccer?" Damien had asked. Tyrone had shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I used to. Before. I was okay at it. You should join the team here." "I don't know. I'm probably too rusty, and I'd have to try out. And what if I'm not good enough? The other kids would laugh." "Or," Damien had countered, "you'd make the team, make some friends, and have fun. What's the worst that could happen?" Tyrone had looked doubtful, but over the next few days, Damien had encouraged him, had helped him practice in the park, had reminded him that being afraid of failure was no reason not to try. Finally, Tyrone had tried out, and he'd made the team. The joy on his face when he'd shown Damien the acceptance letter had been worth every awkward moment of the past months. "I made it," Tyrone had said, his voice filled with wonder and pride. "I actually made the team." "Of course you did," Damien had replied, ruffling the boy's hair in a gesture that felt natural and affectionate. "I told you you would." Attending Tyrone's soccer games became Damien's new favorite activity, though he never would have admitted it to Jake or Terry. He'd show up at the fields with the other parents, cheering from the sidelines, experiencing a vicarious thrill every time Tyrone touched the ball. The first goal was unforgettable. It was the 5th game of the season, and Tyrone had been playing consistently but hadn't scored yet. Damien could see the boy's frustration mounting, could see him trying too hard, putting too much pressure on himself. But then, in the final minutes of the game, there it was, a perfect pass from a teammate, Tyrone receiving it cleanly, dribbling past one defender, then another, and then goal. The ball sailed into the net, and Tyrone's face exploded with pure joy. His teammates swarmed him. and Damien found himself on his feet, cheering louder than he'd ever cheered for anything in his life, his chest swelling with a pride so fierce it almost brought tears to his eyes. After the game, as they were walking to the car, Tyrone had looked up at him with shining eyes. Did you see my goal?" "I saw it," Damien had confirmed, unable to stop grinning. "It was amazing. You were amazing." "You know what?" Damien said. "I think we need to celebrate your first goal." They'd spent the rest of the afternoon at the mall, Damien buying Tyrone new soccer cleats and a team jersey and pretty much anything else the boy wanted, feeling for the first time in his life what it must be like to be a proud parent. The office visit started around the 6-month mark. Damien had a Saturday meeting that he couldn't reschedule, and rather than leave Tyrone alone, he'd learned that lesson after the nanny situation. He brought the boy to Langston Group headquarters. "This is where you work?" Tyrone had asked, staring up at the gleaming skyscraper with wide eyes. "Yeah. Want a tour?" Damien had shown Tyrone everything: the executive offices, the tech labs where his subsidiary company developed new software, the conference rooms with their panoramic views of the city. He'd introduced Tyrone to his secretary, Margaret, to some of the board members he'd run into, to the security staff who all knew him by name, and he'd felt something he'd never experienced before: pride in showing his world to someone else, in seeing it through fresh eyes. Tyrone had been fascinated by everything, asking questions, soaking up information like a sponge. "This is so cool. Do you think I could work here someday?" The question had caught Damien off guard. "You want to work here? Maybe. I mean, if I'm good enough, if I study hard and go to college and—" "Tyrone," Damien had interrupted gently, "if you want to work here, there will always be a place for you. But you should do what makes you happy, not what you think I want." "This would make me happy," Tyrone had said simply. "Getting to work with you would make me happy." And Damien had to turn away, sudden emotion clogging his throat, because when had this happened? When had this angry, grieving boy, who'd hated him just months ago, become someone who looked at him with admiration and affection? When had Damien started to care so deeply about what happened to this kid? Is less than has shown. One hash is greater than. The girl situation arose shortly after. Damien had noticed Tyrone acting strangely, distracted, quieter than usual, spending extra time in front of the mirror before school. "What's going on with you?" Damien had finally asked over dinner one evening, actual dinner at the table together, because somewhere along the way they'd stopped eating in separate rooms. Tyrone had blushed, a deep red color spreading across his cheeks. "Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing. It's just, there's this girl, Kayla. She's in my math class, and she lives in the building next to us, and she's really pretty and smart, and I don't know how to talk to her." Damien had leaned back in his chair, fighting a smile. "Girl trouble. Okay, I can help with that." "You can?" "Kid, I may not know much about being a parent, but talking to women, that's one area where I have extensive experience." Tyrone had rolled his eyes. "I'm not trying to be like you. I don't want to be a playboy." "Ouch," Damien had laughed. "Fair point. But the basics of conversation apply whether you're looking for a relationship or just trying to make a friend. Eye contact, confidence. Show interest in what she has to say. Ask questions. Listen to the answers." Over the next week, Damien had coached Tyrone on the art of conversation, on reading social cues, on building confidence. They'd role-played different scenarios, with Damien playing the part of Kayla and Tyrone practicing his approach. And then, finally, Tyrone had worked up the courage to actually talk to her. When he'd come home from school that Friday, with a huge grin on his face, Damien had known before the boy even said anything. "I talked to her," Tyrone had announced. "I actually talked to Kayla, and she talked back. and we're going to work on a science project together. That's my boy, Damien had said, pulling Tyrone into a hug that the boy returned enthusiastically. My boy. When had that happened? When had Tyrone become his boy? 9 months after the accident, Damien was picking Tyrone up from school when his phone rang. A call from St. Mary's Hospital. His heart had stopped. This was it. Either good news or terrible news, but definitely news. Mr. Langston. The doctor's voice had come through warm and excited. I wanted to let you know that Shirley West is awake. She woke up about an hour ago and has been asking for her son. The relief and joy that flooded through Damien was complicated, tangled with something that might have been sadness, because Shirley waking up was wonderful, was what they'd all been hoping for. But it also meant this strange, unexpected life he'd built with Tyrone was about to change. Tyrone, Damien had said, his voice shaking slightly. Your mom's awake. The look on Tyrone's face, pure, unfiltered joy, was something Damien would remember for the rest of his life. And as they raced to the hospital, as Tyrone bounced in the passenger seat, unable to contain his excitement, Damien found himself feeling grateful and terrified in equal measure. Grateful that Shirley had survived, had woken up, had been given the chance to return to her son's life. Terrified that when she did, there might not be a place for Damien anymore. He'd spent 9 months learning to be a parent, learning to care for this boy, learning to build a life around someone else's needs. And now it was all about to change. Again. The first thing Shirley West became aware of was the beeping. Persistent, rhythmic, mechanical, a sound that didn't belong in any dream she might be having. It pulled at her consciousness like a fisherman reeling in a catch, dragging her up through layers of darkness toward something that felt uncomfortably like awareness. The second thing she noticed was the light. Even with her eyes closed, she could sense it. Bright, clinical, sterile. Not the warm glow of her bedside lamp, not the soft morning sun filtering through curtains. This was harsh, unforgiving fluorescent light that seemed to penetrate her eyelids and probe at her brain. The third thing was the smell. Antiseptic, disinfectant, the unmistakable scent of a hospital. Shirley's eyes flew open, and immediately she regretted it. The light was blinding, assaulting her vision with its intensity. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust, trying to understand where she was and why everything felt so wrong. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, like it belonged to someone else. Her mouth was dry, her tongue thick and cottony. When she tried to move her hand, it responded sluggishly, as if she were underwater. Miss West? Shirley? Can you hear me? A face appeared above her. A woman in scrubs, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a professional smile. A nurse. Shirley tried to speak, but only a croak emerged from her throat. It's okay. Don't try to talk just yet, the nurse said gently, reaching for something beside the bed. You've been through quite an ordeal. Let me get the doctor. The nurse disappeared, leaving Shirley alone with her confusion and mounting panic. Hospital. She was in a hospital. But why? What had happened? She tried to think, tried to remember, but her thoughts were sluggish, fragmented, and then it hit her like a physical blow. The text message. Found you. The memory came rushing back with crystal clarity. The anonymous text, the picture of Tyrone at school, the terror that had seized her heart. She'd run. She'd abandoned her shift at the restaurant and run to her son's school, desperate to get to him, to make sure he was safe. And then, nothing. Darkness. But the text meant Mr. Grant had found them. After 2 years of peace, 2 years of safety, he'd found them, which meant Tyrone was in danger. Which meant she needed to get to him now, immediately, before it was too late. Shirley tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. Panic flooded through her system, her heart rate accelerating. the monitor beside her bed beginning to beep more rapidly. "Tyrone," she managed to croak out, her voice barely recognizable. "My son. I need to see my son." The doctor arrived then, a tall man with graying hair and a calm demeanor that did nothing to soothe Shirley's rising hysteria. He began speaking in measured tones about comas and recovery and taking things slowly, but Shirley wasn't listening. She couldn't listen, not when Tyrone might be in danger. "Where is my son?" she demanded, her voice gaining strength through sheer force of will. "I need to see Tyrone. Please, please, I need to know he's safe. Miss West, you need to calm down," the doctor said, but his words were like trying to hold back a flood with a paper dam. "Your elevated heart rate." "I don't care about my heart rate," Shirley's voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I need my son. Someone found us. They sent me a message. They know where we are, and I need to make sure he's okay." The nurse exchanged a glance with the doctor, and something in that look, concern, sympathy, understanding, made Shirley's panic spike even higher. "What?" she gasped. "What is it? Where's Tyrone? Is he hurt? Did something happen to him?" "Your son is fine," the doctor assured her quickly. "Tyrone is safe and healthy. But Miss West, you need to understand, you've been in a coma for 9 months. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. 9 months? That was impossible. She'd just gotten the text yesterday, or maybe the day before. She couldn't quite remember, but certainly not 9 months ago. That's not. No, Shirley shook her head, wincing at how the movement made the room spin. That can't be right. The text message, I was running to get to Tyrone and you were hit by a car, the doctor explained gently. You ran into traffic without looking and a vehicle struck you. You've been unconscious ever since. Hit by a car, in a coma, 9 months. The information was too big, too overwhelming to process. 9 months of her life, gone. 9 months during which anything could have happened to Tyrone. 9 months during which Mr. Grant could have... "I need to see my son," Shirley said again, and this time her voice was flat, brooking no argument. "Please, I won't calm down, I won't cooperate, I won't do anything you need me to do until I see Tyrone and know that he's safe." The doctor studied her for a long moment, then sighed and nodded. "I'll have someone call his legal guardian, but you need to calm down." Legal guardian. The words sent ice through Shirley's veins. What? Who? I don't have any family here. I didn't designate anyone. The man who hit you with his car, the doctor said quietly. Mr. Damian Langston. He took responsibility for Tyrone when there were no other options. Shirley felt like the world was tilting beneath her, like everything she'd known and understood was shifting into some new, incomprehensible configuration. A stranger had been raising her son for 9 months. The man who'd hit her with his car, who'd put her in this coma in the first place, had been taking care of Tyrone. She didn't know whether to feel grateful or terrified. "Call him," she whispered. "Please, I need to see my son." The drive to St. Mary's was quiet, except for Tyrone's occasional sniffles as he tried to compose himself. Damian kept stealing glances at him, memorizing the joy on his face, trying to be happy for him, even as his own heart ached with the knowledge of what this meant. When they arrived at the hospital, Tyrone practically flew out of the car, his long legs carrying him through the parking lot and into the building with Damian hurrying to keep up. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor, walked down the familiar hallway to Shirley's room, and Damian felt his steps slow as they approached. He'd spent 9 months visiting this room, 9 months talking to an unconscious woman, 9 months building an image in his mind of who Shirley West might be. But he'd never actually met her. Not really. Now he was about to meet the woman whose son had become like his own, the woman who would undoubtedly take Tyrone back and remove him from Damian's life. Tyrone didn't hesitate. He pushed open the door to his mother's room and stopped short, his breath catching in his throat. Shirley sat partially upright in the hospital bed, supported by pillows, wearing a hospital gown, and looking smaller and more fragile than Damien had imagined. Her brown skin had a grayish cast to it, the result of months without sunlight. But her eyes, large, brown, intelligent eyes, were open and alert, and fixed on her son with an expression of such profound love and relief that Damien felt like he was intruding on something sacred just by witnessing it. "Tyrone," she whispered, and her voice broke on the name. "Mom!" Tyrone crossed the room in 3 strides, practically throwing himself at the bed. Shirley caught him as best she could with arms that clearly weren't quite steady yet, and then they were both crying, holding each other, a tangle of relief and joy, and the kind of love that only exists between a parent and child. Damien stood in the doorway, suddenly feeling very much like an outsider, and wondered if he should leave. Give them privacy. This was their moment, not his. But then Shirley's eyes found him over Tyrone's shoulder, and he froze. She was beautiful. The thought hit him like a physical force, unexpected and undeniable. Even weakened by months in a coma, even with tears streaming down her face, even in the harsh fluorescent lighting of a hospital room, she was absolutely beautiful. Her brown eyes were expressive and intelligent, framed by long lashes that were wet with tears. Her bone structure was delicate but strong, high cheekbones and a determined jaw that spoke of resilience and strength. Even with the hospital gown and the pallor of her skin, there was something about her that drew him in, that made him want to know her, to understand her. "Thank you," she mouthed at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and something that might have been weariness. "Thank you for taking care of him." Damien nodded, not trusting his voice, and stepped fully into the room. The reunion was everything Shirley had needed, and more. Holding her son, feeling his solid warmth, breathing in the scent of him, slightly different than she remembered, more teenage boy and less little kid, was like coming home after a long, disorienting journey. She pulled back to look at him properly, and her heart clenched at what she saw. He'd grown. In 9 months, he'd shot up several inches, and his face had lost some of its childhood roundness. He looked older, more mature, more confident than the shy 12-year-old she'd last seen. "Look at you," she said, her hands framing his face. "You're so tall. When did you get so tall?" "I've been eating well," Tyrone said, smiling through his tears. "Damien makes sure I'm taken care of." At the mention of the name, Shirley's eyes shifted to the man standing near the door. Damien Langston, the man who'd hit her with his car, the man who'd become her son's guardian. He was younger than she'd expected, mid-30s at most, and handsome in that way that wealthy, successful men often were. Tall, well-dressed, even in casual clothes, with blue eyes that seemed almost startlingly bright against his features. There was something in his expression as he looked at Tyrone, a softness, a genuine affection that made Shirley's initial defensive hostility waver slightly, but only slightly. She'd learned long ago not to trust men. They always wanted something. "This is Damien," Tyrone said, turning to gesture at the man. "He's my friend. He's been really great, Mom. He's been taking care of me, making sure I go to school, helping with homework, coming to my soccer games." "You're playing soccer?" Shirley interrupted, surprised. Tyrone had always loved soccer but had been too shy to join teams in the past. "Yeah, I made the team, and I even scored my first goal last month, and Damien was there cheering for me." And Tyrone paused, seeming to realize he was rambling. "He's been really good to me, Mom, I promise." Shirley looked at Damien again, trying to reconcile the man before her with the negligent driver she'd imagined, with the stranger who'd taken custody of her son. "Thank you," she said carefully, "for taking care of Tyrone, "I'm grateful." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "It's been my pleasure," Damien replied, and there was something in his voice, sincerity, warmth, that caught her off guard. "Tyrone's a great kid." An awkward silence fell over the room, broken only by the beeping of monitors and the distant sounds of hospital activity in the hallway. The doctor returned then, conducting a series of tests and examinations that confirmed what they'd hoped. Shirley's cognitive functions appeared intact, and while she would need physical therapy to regain full strength and mobility, the prognosis was excellent. "We'd like to keep you for observation for another day or two," the doctor said, "but after that, if everything continues to progress well, you should be able to go home." Home. The word felt strange. Shirley didn't have a home anymore, not really. The apartment she'd been renting before the accident. Had they kept paying the rent? Was her stuff still there? Or had everything been cleared out months ago? As if reading her mind, Damien said quietly, "I took care of your apartment, paid the rent, made sure your things were secure. Everything's still there, waiting for you." Shirley stared at him, trying to process this information. He'd paid her rent for 9 months, while she was in a coma? That had to have cost thousands of dollars. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien looked uncomfortable. It seemed like the right thing to do. I didn't want Tyrone to lose his mother's belongings on top of everything else." Before Shirley could respond, the doctor cleared his throat. "Miss West needs rest. Perhaps you two should come back tomorrow?" Tyrone looked torn, clearly not wanting to leave his mother, but Shirley squeezed his hand. "It's okay, baby. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right here tomorrow." "Promise?" Tyrone asked, and the vulnerability in his voice, the fear that she might disappear again, broke Shirley's heart. "I promise," she said firmly. "I'm awake now, and I'm not leaving you again." After Tyrone and Damien left, Shirley lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. 9 months. 9 months during which her son had bonded with a stranger, had built a life that didn't include her. 9 months during which Mr. Grant could have found them, could have hurt Tyrone. But Tyrone seemed fine. More than fine, he seemed happy, confident, well-adjusted. The shy, scared boy, she remembered, had been replaced by someone who smiled easily, who talked about soccer teams and friends in school. Damien had done that. This stranger, who had no obligation to her or her son, had stepped up and given Tyrone what he needed. Shirley didn't know how to feel about that. Grateful, yes, but also threatened, jealous, worried. What if Tyrone preferred Damien to her now? What if 9 months had been too long and her son had moved on without her? The thoughts spiraled, dark and anxious, until exhaustion finally pulled her under into a dreamless sleep. 2 days later, Shirley was discharged from the hospital. The doctor had provided her with a crutch to help with mobility. Her legs were weak from months of disuse, and she needed support while she rebuilt her strength. Damien and Tyrone arrived to pick her up, and Shirley noticed immediately how comfortable they were together. The easy banter, the inside jokes, the way Tyrone looked to Damien for approval or guidance. It was like watching a father and son, and the observation sent a spike of something painful through Shirley's chest. Damien helped her into his car and drove them to her apartment. The building looked the same as she remembered, but also foreign, like she was seeing it through new eyes after her long absence. When she opened the door to her apartment, everything was exactly as she'd left it. The dishes she'd washed that morning 9 months ago were still in the drying rack. It was like stepping into a time capsule. "I had a cleaning service come by once a month," Damien said quietly, "to keep things fresh. I hope that's okay." Shirley nodded, not trusting her voice. This man, this stranger, had taken care of her home, her son, her life, while she was unconscious. She didn't know how to process that level of kindness. Tyrone helped her settle onto the couch, and then there was another awkward silence as the three of them sat in the small living room. "Mom," Tyrone said finally, "can we talk? Just us?" Damien stood immediately. "I'll wait in the car. Take your time." After he left, Shirley turned to her son. "What is it, baby?" Tyrone took a deep breath. "What's wrong, Mom? You've got that worried look you used to have back when we were in the UK. Shirley's blood ran cold. "What? No, Nothing's wrong, honey. Mom, I know you." Tyrone interrupted gently. "You've got that look, like you want us to leave again." Shirley couldn't deny it. The fear had been her constant companion since waking up, the certainty that Mr. Grant had found them and was waiting to make his move. "I just want to keep you safe," she whispered. "Safe? From what, Mom?" Tyrone said. I don't want to leave. I like it here. I have friends. I'm on the soccer team. I'm doing well in school. I have a life here. But you don't understand the danger." "What danger?" Tyrone's voice rose with frustration. "You keep talking about danger, but nothing has happened. We've been here for over 2 years, and the only bad thing that happened was you getting hit by a car, which had nothing to do with anything from your past. You don't know that. Then explain it to me," Tyrone demanded. "Tell me exactly what you're so afraid of, because right now it just seems like you're paranoid and you want to uproot my entire life for no reason." They'd never fought like this before. Tyrone had always been such a quiet, compliant child. This new assertiveness was unfamiliar territory. "I can't explain it," Shirley said, tears streaming down her face. "You wouldn't understand. Try me," Tyrone challenged. "I'm not a little kid anymore, Mom. Stop treating me like one." But Shirley couldn't tell him, couldn't explain about Mr. Grant, about the debt, about the threats. She'd spent so long protecting Tyrone from that darkness, and she wasn't about to bring it into his life now. "Just trust me," she begged. "Please, baby, trust that I know what's best for you." Tyrone stared at her for a long moment, and then he did something that broke her heart. He pulled out his phone and called Damien. "I want to go home," he said quietly. I think I need to go back to your place." 2 minutes later, Damien arrived. He took one look at Shirley's tear-stained face and Tyrone's set expression and seemed to understand immediately that something had happened. "Hey, buddy, why don't you wait in the car?" Damien said gently to Tyrone. "I want to talk to your mom for a minute." After Tyrone left, Damien turned to Shirley. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Shirley said, wiping at her tears. "It's none of your business." "It is my business when Tyrone is upset," Damien countered. "I'm his mother, and I need to take him with me somewhere safe, somewhere far from here." "Is that really what's best for him?" Damien asked. "Or are you running from something? I don't have to explain myself to you." "You're right, you don't," Damien interrupted. "But Tyrone deserves an explanation. He deserves to know why you want to tear him away from everything he's built here. He's 13 years old. He doesn't know what's best for him. And you do?" Damien challenged. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're making decisions based on fear, not reason. You don't know anything about my life or what I've been through." "Then tell me," Damien said, his voice softening. "Help me understand, Shirley. What are you so afraid of? Please, tell me. Because whatever it is you're running from, I don't think you'd get that far or be able to protect your son in this condition." Damien gestured to her crutch stick, and maybe it was the gentleness in his voice, or the genuine concern in his blue eyes, or simply the fact that she was so tired of carrying this burden alone. But Shirley felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. "There's a man," she whispered, "back in the UK. His name is Elliot Grant." And then, for the first time in over 2 years, Shirley told someone the whole truth. She told Damien about Sean, about Tyrone's surgery, about the loan and the hidden clause and the impossible debt. She told him about Mr. Grant's inappropriate advances, about his threats, about the terror that had driven her to flee across an ocean. She told him about the text message, the last thing she remembered before waking up in the hospital 9 months later. "I thought he'd found us," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought he was coming for Tyrone, and I ran. I didn't think. I didn't look. I just needed to get to my son before it was too late." Damien listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as the story unfolded. When she finally fell silent, exhausted from the telling, he was quiet for a long moment. "How much do you owe him?" he asked finally. Shirley looked at him, confused. "What?" "The debt. How much is it?" £300,000, Shirley said. "But that's not the point. Even if I could pay it, Grant isn't the type to just forget. He wanted me, wanted to own me, and men like that don't let go easily." "I'll pay it," Damien said simply. Shirley stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "What?" "No, absolutely not." "Why not?" "I have the money, more than enough. I can wire it tomorrow, have the whole thing settled." "And what do you want in return?" Shirley demanded, her voice turning cold. "Because that's how this works, isn't it? Men don't just hand over £300,000 without expecting something." Damien looked genuinely hurt by the accusation. "I don't want anything except for Tyrone to be safe, for you both to be safe." "I don't believe you," Shirley said flatly. "Everyone wants something. What's your price, Mr. Langston? What do you expect from me?" "Nothing," Damien insisted. "I'm not asking for anything. I just want to help." "Why?" Shirley challenged. "Why do you care so much? Tyrone isn't your son. I'm not your responsibility. Why would you throw away that kind of money on strangers?" "Because you're not strangers," Damien said quietly. "Not anymore. I've spent 9 months taking care of Tyrone, watching him grow, helping him become the person he is. I visited you in the hospital 3 times a week, talking to you even though you couldn't hear me, hoping you'd wake up. You're not strangers to me, Shirley. You're—" He trailed off, seeming to realize he'd said too much. "We're what?" Shirley pressed. "You're important to me," Damien finished. "Both of you. And I can't stand by and watch you destroy Tyrone's happiness because you're too afraid to accept help." "I'm not afraid to accept help," Shirley shot back. "I'm afraid of owing someone. I'm afraid of being in debt again, of having someone hold something over my head. I've been there before, and I won't do it again." "Then don't think of it as a debt," Damien said. "Think of it as an investment in Tyrone's future, in his safety and happiness. And you expect nothing in return." "I expect you to stay," Damien said. "I expect you to let Tyrone keep his life here, his friends, his school, his soccer team. That's all." Shirley wanted to refuse. Every instinct she had screamed that this was a trap, that men like Damien Langston didn't make offers like this without strings attached. But she also saw the logic in his argument. If the debt was paid, if Grant was satisfied, then maybe, just maybe, they could stop running. Maybe they could actually build a life here, a real life, without constantly looking over their shoulders. "I won't take charity," she said finally. "If you pay the debt, I pay you back. Every penny." "Fine," Damien agreed immediately. "You can work for me." "Doing what?" "Tyrone once mentioned you're a great chef." "I need a cook," Damien said. "Someone who can make actual meals instead of the takeout I've been surviving on. You work as my live-in cook for, say, 3 years. Room and board provided, plus a salary. The salary goes toward paying off the debt." "Live in," Shirley repeated. "In your home, with you, and with Tyrone," Damien added. "He's already living there anyway. This way you'd be together, you could keep an eye on him, make sure he's safe. I'll even arrange for private security until we're sure Grant is satisfied and won't try anything." Shirley studied him, trying to find the catch, the hidden motive. And you expect me to believe that all you want is cooking? That there are no other expectations? Damien met her gaze steadily. I won't lie to you, Shirley. You're beautiful. But I would never take advantage of you or try to harm you or Tyrone. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. You cook, I pay off your debt, and at the end of 3 years, you're free to leave if that's what you want. I want it in writing, Shirley said. A proper contract, reviewed by a lawyer. Absolutely, Damien agreed. And if at any point I feel uncomfortable or unsafe, you can leave immediately, Damien finished. No questions asked. I'll even help you and Tyrone relocate if that's what you need. Shirley was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. She could refuse, could try to run again, could uproot Tyrone's life, and hope they could stay ahead of Grant forever. Or she could take the risk. Trust this man, who had taken care of her son, who had kept her apartment secure, who was offering her a way out of the nightmare she'd been living for over 2 years. Okay, she said finally. We have a deal. The meeting with Elliot Grant took place 1 week after Shirley agreed to Damien's terms. Damien had insisted on handling it alone, but Shirley had demanded to be present. This was her debt, her past, and she needed to see it resolved with her own eyes. They met at a high-end restaurant in the financial district. Neutral ground, public, with plenty of witnesses. Damien had chosen it carefully, making sure Grant understood that he wouldn't be intimidated. Grant arrived precisely on time, looking exactly as Shirley remembered. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. When he saw Shirley sitting beside Damien, that smile widened. Miss West, he said smoothly, how wonderful to see you looking so well. I heard about your accident. Quite tragic. Shirley's hands clenched into fists beneath the table, but she forced herself to remain calm. Mr. Grant, and you must be Mr. Langston, Grant continued, turning his attention to Damien. I understand you want to discuss Shirley's debt to me. I want to settle it, Damien corrected. Today, final payment, no further contact with Miss West or her son. He slid a cashier's check across the table. Shirley saw the amount, almost $600,000, and felt her stomach drop. The equivalent of that in pounds was more than the debt, much more. Grant picked up the check, examined it, did the math in his head and raised an eyebrow. Generous. The extra 100,000 is for? For your trouble, Damien said coldly, and to ensure you understand that this is the end. You will never contact Shirley again. You will never go near her or her son. You will forget they exist. Grant's smile never wavered. And if I don't agree to these terms, then I will make it my personal mission to expose every illegal operation you run, Damien said calmly. Every cop in your pocket gets investigated. Every business you own gets audited. Every connection you have gets scrutinized. I have resources you can't imagine, Grant, and I'm not afraid to use them. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other across the table. Shirley held her breath, waiting to see which way this would go. Finally, Grant pocketed the check. Fine. Consider the debt settled, he said. I guess you won't be hearing from me again, Shirley. See that we don't, Damien replied. After Grant left, Shirley sat in stunned silence. It was done. Just like that. After over 2 years of fear, of running, of constant anxiety, it was done. Are you okay? Damien asked gently. Shirley nodded, not trusting her voice. Tears were streaming down her face, but for the first time in so long, they were tears of relief. 3 days later, Grant called her personally. The conversation was brief and professional. He apologized for any distress he'd caused, assured her that their business was concluded, and promised she would never hear from him again. When she hung up, Shirley sat on the edge of her bed in her apartment and sobbed, great, racking sobs that shook her entire body. She was free. After everything, after all the fear and pain and running, she was finally, truly free. Moving into Damien's penthouse felt surreal. The place was enormous, far bigger than any home Shirley had ever lived in. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city. The kitchen was state-of-the-art, with appliances Shirley had only ever seen in magazines. Her bedroom was larger than her entire previous apartment. "This is too much," she said to Damien as he showed her around. "It's what we agreed on," Damien replied. "Room and board in exchange for cooking. You could hire a chef for less than what you're paying off my debt," Shirley pointed out. "Probably," Damien agreed. "But I don't want a chef. I want you and Tyrone to be safe and together. This accomplishes that." Shirley didn't know how to respond to that, so she just nodded and focused on settling in. The first meal she cooked, a simple roasted chicken with vegetables and homemade bread, was met with such enthusiasm from both Damien and Tyrone that she actually laughed. "This is incredible," Damien said, looking genuinely amazed. "I forgot food could taste like this." "It's just chicken," Shirley protested. "It's the best chicken I've ever had," Tyrone declared through a mouthful of food. Cooking became Shirley's way of contributing, of feeling useful. She threw herself into it, experimenting with new recipes, learning Tyrone's favorites, even asking Damien what he liked. She also began attending Tyrone's soccer games with Damien, sitting beside him on the metal bleachers, cheering for her son. She couldn't help but notice how happy Tyrone looked, how confident, how completely in his element. Damien had done this, had helped Tyrone become this version of himself. "He scored his first goal last month," Damien told her during one game. "It was incredible. He was so proud of himself. I wish I could have seen it," Shirley said quietly. "You're seeing this one," Damien pointed out. "That's what matters." When Tyrone scored during that game, a beautiful shot from midfield, both Shirley and Damien jumped to their feet, cheering. In the excitement, Damien grabbed her hand and squeezed it, and Shirley didn't pull away. The family outings started small. Ice cream after a soccer game, a movie on the weekend. But they grew into something more. Trips to the park, visits to museums, evenings spent watching Star Wars movies, while Tyrone and Damien quoted their favorite lines. Shirley found herself relaxing, laughing, enjoying these moments in a way she hadn't allowed herself to in years. With Damien, she felt safe, protected, like she could finally stop running and just be. And Damien was different than she'd expected. Yes, he was wealthy and successful, but he was also kind and funny and genuinely interested in Tyrone's life. He asked about school, helped with homework, gave advice about Tyrone's crush on a girl named Kayla. "You're good at this," Shirley told him one evening after Tyrone had gone to bed. "At what?" Damien asked. "Being a parent. You're really good at it." Damien looked surprised, almost embarrassed. "I'm just doing my best. Tyrone makes it easy. He's a great kid." "He is," Shirley agreed. "But you've helped him become that. The confident, happy boy I see now. That's because of you. That's because of both of us," Damien corrected gently. "You raised him for more than 12 years, Shirley. You gave him the foundation. I just helped him build on it." The compliment made Shirley's throat tight with emotion. Tyrone's 14th birthday arrived in early October. They celebrated together, just the three of them, which was exactly what Tyrone wanted. Damien took the day off work, and they spent the afternoon at an arcade, competing in games and laughing at each other's terrible skills. That evening, Shirley cooked Tyrone's favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread and a homemade chocolate cake. They sang happy birthday, watched Tyrone blow out his candles, and presented him with gifts. New soccer gear from Damien, a set of Star Wars books from Shirley. After Tyrone went to bed, Shirley and Damien sat together in the living room, the city lights twinkling through the windows. "Thank you," Shirley said quietly, "for today, for everything. You've given Tyrone such an incredible life, such an incredible birthday. I don't know how to repay you for that." "You don't need to repay me," Damien said, turning to look at her. "Seeing him happy is payment enough. You really love him, don't you?" "It wasn't a question. I do," Damien confirmed. "I know that probably makes things complicated, and I know you might worry that I'm trying to take your place or—" "I don't worry about that anymore," Shirley interrupted. "I did, at first, but I've seen you with him, Damien. I've seen how you care for him, how you make him feel valued and important. You're not trying to replace me. You're just being there for him in a way he's never had before. He deserves it," Damien said simply. "Every kid deserves to have someone who shows up, who cares, who makes them feel like they matter." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, and Shirley realized with a start that she was happy. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time since her father died, she felt genuinely, completely happy. And it was because of this man, this unexpected, complicated, wonderful man who had crashed into her life, literally, and changed everything. "Damien," she said softly. "Yeah? I misjudged you. At the hospital I thought you wanted something from me, that you had ulterior motives. But you don't, do you? You really are just trying to help." "I really am," Damien confirmed. "That's rare," Shirley said. "In my experience, people always want something." "I'm sorry that's been your experience," Damien said sincerely. "Not everyone is like that." "You've shown me that," Shirley admitted. "Every day, you show me that." Their eyes met, and Shirley felt something shift between them. An awareness, a connection that went beyond gratitude or friendship. For a moment, she thought Damien might lean in, might kiss her, and she wasn't sure what she would do if he did. But instead, he smiled and stood up. "I should let you get some rest. Big day tomorrow. Tyrone has a soccer game." "Right," Shirley said, trying to ignore the flutter of disappointment in her chest. "Good night, Damien." "Good night, Shirley." As she lay in bed that night, Shirley found herself thinking about Damien Langston in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude or debt. She thought about his smile, his laugh, the way he looked at Tyrone with such obvious love, the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. And she realized, with a mixture of terror and excitement, that she was developing feelings for him. Real feelings, the kind that could complicate everything, or make everything perfect. She just didn't know which it would be. The months following Tyrone's 14th birthday brought with them a subtle shift in the atmosphere of Damien's penthouse. A shift so gradual that at first, neither Damien nor Shirley consciously acknowledged it. It was there in the way conversations lingered a few seconds longer than necessary, in how their laughter came easier and more genuine, in the comfortable silences that somehow felt charged with unspoken words. Damien found himself thinking about Shirley at the most inconvenient times. During board meetings, he'd catch himself remembering the way she hummed while cooking breakfast. While reviewing quarterly reports, his mind would wander to how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed at one of Tyrone's jokes. At night, lying alone in his bedroom, he'd recall the warmth in her voice when she thanked him for small gestures, picking up groceries she'd mentioned they needed, or staying up late to help Tyrone with a particularly difficult math problem. This was new territory for Damien Langston. In his 35 years, he'd never experienced this particular brand of torture. Wanting someone he couldn't have, shouldn't pursue, wouldn't risk losing by making an inappropriate move. His past relationships, if they could even be called that, had been simple, transactional affairs. Physical attraction led to mutual pleasure, and when one party or both lost interest, they parted ways with minimal drama. But Shirley was different. Everything about her was different. She wasn't just beautiful, though she was certainly that. Her warm brown skin seemed to glow in the morning light, and her smile could brighten even his darkest moods. She wasn't just intelligent, though their late-night conversations about everything from politics to philosophy to the best way to season chicken revealed a sharp, curious mind. She wasn't just kind, though her patience with Tyrone and her genuine care for others constantly amazed him. Shirley was all of these things and more. She was strong, stronger than anyone Damien had ever met. She'd survived loss, betrayal, exploitation, and fear, and had somehow emerged from it all still capable of love, still willing to trust, still able to laugh. She was devoted. The way she loved Tyrone was absolute, fierce, and beautiful in its purity. And she was resilient, watching her rebuild her strength after the coma, reclaim her independence, and construct a new life from the rubble of her old one filled Damien with an admiration that bordered on awe. But more than all of that, Shirley made him want to be better. For the first time in his life, Damien found himself questioning his perpetual adolescence, his refusal to commit, his shallow approach to relationships. When he looked at Shirley and Tyrone, at the family they'd somehow become, the three of them together, he felt something he'd never experienced before, a desire for permanence. It terrified him. What if he ruined it? What if he admitted his feelings, and she rejected him, and the comfortable life they'd built together became unbearably awkward? What if she agreed to give him a chance, but he proved unable to be the man she deserved, the partner she needed? What if his track record of failed relationships wasn't just a choice, but a fundamental flaw in his character? And worse, far worse, what if she only agreed because she felt obligated? She was living in his home, working for him to pay off a debt. Even though he'd never once made her feel pressured, even though their arrangement was completely professional, the power dynamic existed. If he confessed his feelings, would she feel trapped? Would she think he'd been playing a long game all along, waiting for the right moment to collect on some unspoken expectation? The thought made Damien physically ill, so he said nothing. He buried his feelings deep, smiled when appropriate, maintained professional boundaries, and suffered in silence. What Damien didn't know was that across the penthouse, in her own bedroom, Shirley was engaged in a remarkably similar internal battle. She'd noticed when it started, that flutter in her stomach when Damien smiled at her, the warmth that spread through her chest when he praised her cooking, the way her pulse quickened when their hands accidentally touched. At first, she dismissed it as gratitude. Damien had saved her life, saved Tyrone's life, given them safety and security when they'd had nothing. Of course, she felt warmly toward him. Anyone would. But gratitude didn't explain why she found herself styling her hair more carefully in the mornings, or why she'd started wearing the nicer clothes Damien had insisted on buying for her. "You can't keep wearing the same 3 outfits," he'd said reasonably, and she'd been too tired to argue. Gratitude didn't account for the disappointment she felt on evenings when Damien worked late, or the irrational jealousy that spiked through her when his secretary, a beautiful woman named Margaret, called him multiple times a day. Shirley West had developed feelings for Damien Langston, and she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. Her relationship history was limited and traumatic. Sean had been her first and only love, and that had ended in betrayal and death. Mr. Grant's predatory advances had taught her that powerful men often saw women as possessions, things to be acquired and controlled. Her father had been loving, but was long gone. She had no framework for healthy romantic relationships, no template to follow. More than that, she didn't trust her own judgment. She'd missed all the warning signs with Sean, had failed to see his descent into criminality until it was too late. What if she was missing something crucial about Damien? What if beneath his kindness lay expectations she couldn't meet, demands she couldn't fulfill? And there was Tyrone to consider. Her son had finally found stability, happiness, a father figure he adored. If Shirley pursued something romantic with Damien, and it failed, and statistically it would fail, wouldn't it? Tyrone would be the one to suffer. She couldn't risk her son's well-being for her own selfish desires. So Shirley, like Damien, remained silent. She cooked his meals, cared for their home, supported Tyrone, and pretended the ache in her chest was anything other than longing. The tension between them built gradually, manifesting in small moments that left them both shaken and confused. The soccer game incident happened on a crisp Saturday afternoon. The high school stadium was packed with parents and students, the air filled with the sounds of cheering and the school band's enthusiastic if somewhat off-key performance. Damien and Shirley sat side by side on the metal bleachers, close enough that their shoulders occasionally brushed, sending small electric shocks through both of them. Tyrone had become one of the team's star players over the season, his initial shyness replaced with confidence and skill. Damien had attended every single game, cheering from the sidelines, offering encouragement and advice. Since waking from her coma and moving into the penthouse, Shirley had joined him, and she marveled at the transformation in her son. This particular game was the season championship, and the score was tied 2 goals each with less than a minute remaining. The tension in the stadium was palpable, every spectator on the edge of their seats. The ball came to Tyrone in midfield. Time seemed to slow as he controlled it, looked up, spotted an opening. Damien grabbed Shirley's hand without thinking, squeezing it tightly as Tyrone began his run toward the goal. "Come on, buddy," Damien muttered. "You've got this." Shirley felt her heart pounding, whether from Tyrone's play or from Damien's hand wrapped around hers. She couldn't say. Probably both. Tyrone dodged one defender, then another. He was in position now, just outside the penalty box. The goalkeeper crouched, ready. The crowd held its collective breath. Tyrone drew back his foot and kicked. The ball sailed through the air in a perfect arc, curving just beyond the goalkeeper's desperate dive, and hit the back of the net with a satisfying thwack. Goal! The stadium erupted. The final whistle blew seconds later. Tyrone's team had won the championship. Damien and Shirley leaped to their feet simultaneously, still holding hands, and then, without thinking, without planning, driven purely by excitement and joy, they turned to each other and embraced. It was supposed to be a brief, celebratory hug, a simple expression of shared happiness for Tyrone's achievement. But the moment Damien's arms wrapped around Shirley's waist, the moment she felt the solid warmth of his chest against hers, the moment their faces ended up mere inches apart, everything changed. Time froze. The noise of the celebration faded to a distant roar. Damien's blue eyes locked onto Shirley's brown ones, and in that suspended moment, they both felt it. The undeniable pull, the magnetic attraction, the absolute certainty that this was more than friendship, more than gratitude, more than convenience. Damien's gaze dropped to Shirley's lips. Shirley's breath caught in her throat. For one heart-stopping second, it seemed inevitable that they would kiss right there, in front of hundreds of people. Consequences be damned. Then reality crashed back. They both became aware of where they were, of the people around them, of Tyrone somewhere on the field below celebrating with his teammates. They sprang apart awkwardly, faces flushed, hearts racing. That was. Tyrone did great, Damien managed, his voice slightly rough. Yes, Shirley agreed, smoothing down her shirt unnecessarily. He was amazing. They didn't look at each other for the rest of the game's aftermath, both shaken by how close they'd come to crossing a line neither was sure should be crossed. The kitchen incident occurred 2 weeks later, on a quiet Thursday evening. Damien had come home from work earlier than usual, loosening his tie as he walked through the door of the penthouse. The smell of something delicious cooking drew him toward the kitchen, where he found Shirley humming softly to herself as she stirred a pot on the stove. She'd changed since moving in, not just physically, though the healthy glow had returned to her skin and she'd regained the weight she'd lost during the coma. She moved through the penthouse now with confidence and ease, no longer the frightened, uncertain woman who'd first arrived. This was her home too, and it showed in the comfortable way she navigated the space. "Smells incredible," Damien said from the doorway, startling her slightly. Shirley turned, a smile lighting up her face. "You're home early. I'm making jerk chicken with rice and peas." Tyrone requested it. "Lucky me," Damien said, moving into the kitchen. "Anything I can help with? You can set the table if you'd like," Shirley replied, turning back to the stove. "Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. They moved around each other with practiced ease, Damien gathering plates and silverware while Shirley tended to the cooking. It was domestic and comfortable, and Damien found himself imagining this as his permanent reality, coming home every evening to Shirley's cooking, to her smile, to the warmth of shared meals and easy conversation. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice when Shirley stepped back from the stove, didn't see her foot catch on the edge of the kitchen mat. Shirley felt herself falling backward, arms pinwheeling as she tried to regain her balance. A gasp escaped her lips, and then strong arms caught her, steadying her, pulling her back from the fall. Damien had moved on pure instinct, dropping the plates onto the counter and lunging forward to catch Shirley before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her waist, supporting her weight as he stabilized them both. And suddenly, they were frozen again, closer this time than they'd been at the soccer game. Shirley's hands had come up to grip Damien's shoulders, and his arms were secure around her waist. Their faces were mere inches apart, so close that Damien could count the flecks of gold in Shirley's brown eyes, could feel the warmth of her breath on his lips. Time stopped. The kitchen faded away. There was nothing in the world except this moment, this woman, this overwhelming need to close the tiny distance between them, and finally, kiss her the way he'd been dreaming about for months. Damien's blue eyes were locked on Shirley's brown ones, and she saw everything in his gaze. The desire, the longing, the barely restrained need. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her lips parted slightly. She watched as Damien's gaze dropped to her mouth, saw the way his pupils dilated, felt the slight tightening of his arms around her waist. He was going to kiss her, and she was going to let him. More than that, she wanted him to. Damien began to lean in, his eyes starting to close, his lips parting. "Mom!" "Damien, I'm back from soccer practice." Tyrone's voice echoed from the hallway, the front door slamming behind him. Damien and Shirley sprang apart as if electrocuted, putting several feet of distance between them in the space of a heartbeat. Shirley turned quickly back to the stove, stirring the pot with unnecessary vigor, her face burning. Damien grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water, downing half of it in one gulp, trying to calm his racing pulse. Tyrone burst into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder, a huge grin on his face. "Guess what? Coach says my injury is healing pretty fast and I'm starting in the next game. Isn't that awesome?" "That's wonderful, baby," Shirley managed, her voice only slightly strangled. "Proud of you, buddy," Damien added, setting down his water glass and forcing a smile. Tyrone looked between them, his grin faltering slightly. "Are you guys okay? You both look kind of weird." "Fine," Shirley said quickly. "Just fine. Dinner's almost ready. Go wash up." "Okay," Tyrone said slowly, clearly sensing something was off but not quite sure what. He headed toward the bathroom, glancing back once with a puzzled expression. After he left, Damien and Shirley stood in awkward silence, carefully not looking at each other. "I should finish dinner?" Shirley said finally. "Right. I'll set the table," Damien replied. They completed their tasks in uncomfortable quiet, hyper-aware of each other's presence, the almost kiss hanging between them like a physical thing. From that point on, Tyrone noticed everything. He'd always been observant. Quiet kids usually were, but now he paid close attention to the way his mother and Damien interacted. And what he saw fascinated and delighted him in equal measure. He noticed how Damien's gaze would linger on his mother when she wasn't looking, how his mom would smile to herself whenever Damien complimented her cooking, the way they both seemed to find excuses to be in the same room, even when they didn't actually need to be. He noticed the stolen glances during dinner, the way their hands would sometimes brush when passing dishes, and they'd both jerk back as if burned. The awkward tension that would fill the room when they were left alone together, as if neither knew quite what to say. Most tellingly, he noticed the way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching, the softness in Damien's expression, the longing in his mother's eyes. They were in love with each other. It was obvious to anyone with eyes. Well, anyone, except the two people in question, apparently. Tyrone thought about this for several days, turning it over in his mind. His mother deserved to be happy. After everything she'd been through, his grandfather's death, Sean's betrayal, Mr. Grant's threats, years of running and fear, she deserved to have someone who loved her, who treated her with respect and kindness. And Damien had become the father Tyrone had never really had. Damien showed up. Damien cared. Damien had taught Tyrone how to be confident, how to stand up for himself, how to pursue his dreams. If his mother and Damien got together, they could be a real family. Not just people living in the same space, but an actual family. The only problem was that both adults seemed determined to ignore their obvious feelings for each other. Well, Tyrone decided, if they weren't going to do anything about it, he would just have to help them along. Tyrone's first scheme came to him during history class, of all places. His teacher was droning on about arranged marriages in medieval Europe, and Tyrone found his mind wandering to his current situation. If people in the past could be brought together by outside forces, why couldn't he do the same for his mom and Damien? That evening at dinner, Tyrone cleared his throat importantly. "So, I have this school project," he announced. Damien looked up from his plate. "Oh? What's it about?" "It's for my social studies class," Tyrone explained, improvising as he went. "We're studying relationships and family dynamics. I'm supposed to interview a couple about what makes a good relationship work." Shirley paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "That sounds like an interesting assignment." "Yeah, but here's the problem," Tyrone continued, putting on his best distressed expression. "I can't find anyone to interview. All my friends' parents are either divorced or said they're too busy. And I asked Kayla's parents, but they just had a big fight, and her mom said the timing was bad." "What about your Damien's parents?" Shirley suggested. "Damien's parents have been married for..." "How long, Damien?" 38 years, Damien supplied. "But they're traveling right now, won't be back for another month." "Exactly," Tyrone said. "So I had this idea. What if you two pretended to be a couple? Just for the interview. I could ask you the questions my teacher gave me, and you could just, answer as if you were together. Role play, kind of." Damien nearly choked on his water. "What?" "It's just for a school project," Tyrone said innocently. "And you live together anyway, so you already know a lot about each other. It would be super helpful. Please?" Shirley and Damien exchanged glances, both clearly uncomfortable with the idea but neither wanting to disappoint Tyrone. "I suppose, if it's just pretend," Shirley said slowly. Sure, buddy, Damien agreed, though his voice sounded strained. We can help you out. Awesome. Tyrone pulled out a notebook. Okay, so the first question is, what do you appreciate most about each other? Another awkward glance between the adults. Damien cleared his throat. Well, I appreciate Shirley's strength. She's been through a lot, more than most people could handle, and she's managed to not only survive but create a good life for Tyrone. She's resilient and kind and, yeah, strong. Shirley felt warmth spreading through her chest at his words. She looked down at her plate, trying to compose herself before responding. I appreciate Damien's generosity, not just financially, though that's been incredible, but the way he's generous with his time, with his attention, the way he shows up for people, for Tyrone. He didn't have to become a father figure, but he chose to, and he's been amazing at it. Tyrone scribbled in his notebook, hiding a smile. This was going perfectly. Next question, he said. What would your ideal date be? Date? Shirley repeated, her voice slightly higher than normal. Yeah, you know, if you were actually a couple, where would you want to go? Tyrone pressed. Damien thought for a moment. Honestly, something simple. Maybe a quiet restaurant with good food and good conversation, or a walk through the park at sunset. I've done the whole fancy nightclub, expensive champagne thing, and it's empty. I think the best dates are the ones where you actually get to talk, get to know each other. Shirley nodded slowly. I'd want something like that too. Not flashy or expensive, just real. Maybe cooking dinner together, or going to a bookstore and picking out books for each other. Something that lets you see how the other person thinks, what they value. They were looking at each other now, the pretense of the interview falling away. Tyrone might as well have not been in the room. That sounds nice, Damien said softly. It does, Shirley agreed. Tyrone coughed pointedly, breaking the moment. Both adults looked at him, seeming to remember where they were. Right, sorry, Damien said. What's the next question? Tyrone asked several more questions. About communication, about handling disagreements, about building trust. And with each answer, Shirley and Damien revealed more of themselves, more of what they wanted, more of what they valued. By the time the interview ended, Tyrone was satisfied with his work. He'd seen the way they looked at each other while answering, heard the genuine emotion in their voices. Seeds had been planted, but clearly, he needed to do more. Scheme number 2 came together the following weekend. Tyrone had mentioned casually to both Damien and his mother that Kayla's family was planning a day at Harbor Park, one of the city's nicest recreational areas, with walking trails, a lake, game booths, and food vendors. Her parents said it would be fun to meet you guys, Tyrone had said to his mother. You know, since Kayla and I are close. To Damien, he'd said, Mom doesn't really have any friends here, and I think she'd like to meet some other adults. Would you mind coming along? She might feel more comfortable if you're there. Both adults had agreed, neither knowing the other had been given slightly different information. Saturday morning found the three of them driving to Harbor Park. It was a beautiful day, unusually warm, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. The park was crowded with families and couples, the air filled with laughter and the sounds of distant music from various vendors. They spotted Kayla and her parents near the entrance. Kayla was a pretty girl with braces and auburn hair, and her parents seemed friendly enough. After brief introductions and pleasantries, Kayla grabbed Tyrone's hand. Come on, there's a booth with the cutest stuffed animals, and I want to try to win one, she said, already pulling him away. Oh, we should all, Shirley started, but the two teenagers were already disappearing into the crowd. Kayla's mother checked her phone. Oh no, I forgot we have that thing, she said to her husband. though her acting was nearly as transparent as Tyrone's had been. "Right, that thing," her husband agreed, catching on. "We really should go check on that thing. It was nice meeting you both." And just like that, before Damien and Shirley could protest, they were alone. They stood awkwardly for a moment, looking around at the bustling park. "Well," Damien said finally, "I guess we've been ditched." Shirley laughed despite herself. "I guess we have. Do you think they planned this?" "Almost certainly," Damien replied. "Tyrone's been acting suspicious all week. Should we be concerned about him spending unsupervised time with a girl?" Shirley asked, though her tone was amused rather than worried. "They're surrounded by about 1,000 people in a public park in broad daylight," Damien pointed out. "I think we can allow it." "True." Shirley looked around. "So, what do we do now? We could go sit on a bench," Damien suggested, though he didn't sound enthusiastic about the prospect. "We could," Shirley agreed. Or we could walk around, enjoy the weather, maybe get some food," Damien finished. Shirley smiled. "That sounds nice." They began walking along one of the park's main paths, past families having picnics and couples holding hands. The conversation flowed easily. It always did between them, moving from Tyrone's recent soccer games to a documentary Damien had watched to Shirley's thoughts on trying a new recipe she'd seen online. At one point, they passed a couple arguing loudly about something trivial, and Damien and Shirley exchanged amused glances. "Remind me," Damien said quietly, "in your interview answer about handling disagreements, what did you say was important?" "Communication without accusations," Shirley replied, playing along. "And picking your battles. Not everything is worth fighting about." "Solid advice," Damien said. Those two could use it. They wandered through the game section, where vendors had set up various carnival-style attractions. At one booth, a barker was calling out challenges to knock down stacked bottles with a baseball. "3 throws for $5, the man called. "Win your lady a prize." Damien raised an eyebrow at Shirley. "What do you say? Want to see if I remember anything from my brief stint on the baseball team in high school?" "You played baseball?" Shirley asked, surprised. "For exactly 1 season before I realized I preferred basketball," Damien said. "But I had a decent arm. Come on, let me win you something." He paid the vendor and selected 3 baseballs. The first throw went wide, missing the bottles entirely. "Rust," Damien muttered. "No pressure," Shirley teased. The second throw hit the edge of the stack but didn't knock them down. "You're doing great," Shirley said, laughing. Damien mock glared at her. "Your confidence in me is overwhelming." For his third throw, he took more time, aimed carefully, and released. The ball struck the center of the stack perfectly, sending bottles flying in all directions. "We have a winner," the vendor announced. Damien bowed dramatically while Shirley applauded. He selected a large stuffed bear from the prize selection and presented it to her with exaggerated ceremony. "For you, my lady," he said in a terrible British accent. Shirley laughed, accepting the bear. It was soft and brown, with a red ribbon around its neck. "Thank you. He's perfect." "Does he have a name?" Damien asked as they resumed walking. "I'll have to think about it," Shirley said, hugging the bear. "Maybe Damien Jr., in honor of his brave father." "Absolutely not," Damien said immediately. "I refuse to share a name with a stuffed bear." "Too late, it's decided," Shirley declared, grinning. They spent the next hour wandering through the park, eating overpriced but delicious food truck offerings, watching street performers, and talking, just talking, about everything and nothing. About Tyrone's future, about Shirley's dreams of maybe opening her own restaurant someday, about Damien's complicated relationship with corporate success. At one point, they found themselves at the edge of the lake, watching ducks glide across the water. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "This was nice," Shirley said softly. "Thank you too," Damien replied. "I enjoyed this, more than I've enjoyed anything in a long time." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset, and Damien found himself wanting to reach for Shirley's hand, wanting to pull her close, to tell her how he felt, to risk everything for the possibility of something real, but he didn't. The moment felt too fragile, too perfect to risk shattering with an unwanted confession. They stayed by the lake until the sun fully set, neither wanting the day to end, both knowing they'd have to address the growing feelings between them eventually. But not today. Today, they could just enjoy this, the sunset, the company, the gentle pretending that they were simply two friends enjoying a day at the park. Tyrone's third and most ambitious scheme took 2 weeks to plan. He'd noticed that his previous attempts had brought Damien and Shirley closer, but hadn't resulted in them actually admitting their feelings. They needed a real push, something that would force them to confront what was clearly obvious to everyone except themselves. The opportunity came when Tyrone's best friend, Marcus, invited him to a sleepover. It was perfect timing. A Friday night when both Damien and his mother would be home, with no soccer games or other commitments. "Mom, can I sleep over at Marcus's house Friday?" Tyrone asked during dinner on Wednesday. "I suppose that's fine," Shirley said. "I'll need to call his parents first to make sure it's okay with them." "Already done," Tyrone said, perhaps a bit too quickly. "His mom said she'd love to have me. She's making her famous lasagna." "Well, all right then," Shirley agreed. Tyrone's next move was more subtle. On Friday afternoon, before leaving for Marcus's house, he set up the living room. He queued up several romantic comedies on the streaming service, the kind with just enough humor to avoid being too obvious, but enough romance to set a mood. He arranged pillows and blankets on the large sectional sofa. He even popped a bag of popcorn and left it in a bowl on the coffee table, along with a note that read, "Thought you guys might want to relax tonight. Enjoy. Tea." Then, separately, he texted both Damien and his mother. To his mom, "You should take it easy tonight. Watch a movie or something. You work too hard." To Damien, "Mom seems tired. Maybe suggest watching a movie together. She could probably use the company." At 5 p.m., Tyrone left for his sleepover with a satisfied smile on his face. Phase 3 of Operation Get Mom and Damien Together was in motion. Shirley discovered Tyrone's setup around 6:30 p.m. after she'd finished cleaning the kitchen from dinner. She smiled at the note, touched by her son's thoughtfulness, but felt a flutter of nervousness at the prospect of an evening alone with Damien. They'd been alone before, of course, but there was something about the deliberate setup, the romantic ambiance, the clearly intentional arrangement, that made this feel different. She was about to retreat to her room with a book when Damien emerged from his home office, loosening his tie. "Tyrone gone?" he asked. "Left about an hour ago," Shirley confirmed. "Did you see the living room? The shrine to romantic comedies? Hard to miss," Damien said, amused. "He's not subtle. Our kid. Our kid." The casual possessiveness in Damien's phrasing made Shirley's heart skip. "No, he's not," she agreed. "I was going to just read in my room, let you have the living room if you wanted to watch something. Or," Damien said carefully, "we could watch something together." Tyrone went to a lot of effort. Seems a shame to waste it. Shirley bit her lip, torn between wisdom and desire. Wisdom said spending a romantic evening alone with Damien was dangerous. Desire said she wanted nothing more. Desire won. "Okay," she said. "Let me just change into something more comfortable." 20 minutes later, they were settled on opposite ends of the large sectional, the bowl of popcorn strategically placed between them like a buffer. Damien had changed too, trading his work clothes for jeans and a soft gray sweater that made his blue eyes even more striking. The first movie was a light-hearted romantic comedy about a wedding planner who falls for a groom. It was predictable and charming, and they found themselves laughing at the same moments, groaning at the same cheesy lines. No professional wedding planner would ever do that, Shirley commented during a particularly absurd scene. You say that like you've planned a lot of weddings, Damien teased. I've watched enough reality TV to know better, Shirley countered. As the movie progressed, they found themselves slowly migrating toward the center of the couch. It wasn't deliberate, at least not consciously. Damien would lean forward to grab some popcorn, and when he settled back, he'd be a few inches closer to the middle. Shirley would adjust her position to see the screen better and end up slightly less far away. By the time the first movie's inevitable happy ending arrived, they were sitting close enough that their shoulders occasionally touched. That was terrible, Damien declared as the credits rolled. Absolutely awful, Shirley agreed. Want to watch another? They scrolled through the options Tyrone had queued up, critiquing each one. Too sappy, Shirley said about one. Too predictable, Damien said about another. Oh, this one looks interesting, Shirley said, pausing on a newly released horror film that had been trending online. I've heard good things. Horror? Really? Damien asked, surprised. I like to be scared sometimes, Shirley admitted. It's cathartic. All right, Damien agreed. But if you get nightmares, I'm not the one explaining to Tyrone why you're sleeping with the lights on. Deal, Shirley said, hitting play. The movie started innocently enough. A family moving into a new home. Strange noises in the night. The usual horror setup. But the filmmakers clearly knew what they were doing, because within the first 20 minutes, there were several genuine jump scares that had both Damien and Shirley flinching. During a particularly tense scene, the protagonist investigating a suspicious sound in the basement. Shirley reached blindly for the popcorn bowl, her hand colliding with Damien's. They both froze, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how their hands were touching. Neither pulled away. Sorry, Shirley whispered, though she didn't move her hand. It's okay, Damien replied, equally quietly, also not moving. They stayed like that, hands touching in the popcorn bowl, until a monster jumped out on screen, and they both jerked back with startled yelps. Shoot! Okay, that was genuinely scary, Damien admitted, his heart racing, though whether from the movie or from touching Shirley he wasn't sure. Agreed, Shirley said, laughing shakily. As the movie continued, the scares became more intense. During one particularly terrifying sequence, Shirley unconsciously leaned into Damien, seeking comfort. His arm came up automatically, wrapping around her shoulders, pulling her close. They both stilled, suddenly aware of their position. Shirley's head was resting against Damien's shoulder. His arm was warm and solid around her. She could feel his heartbeat, rapid against her cheek. She should move, should pull away, should maintain the professional, friendly distance they'd been so carefully preserving. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was, Damien's breath caught in his throat. Shirley was pressed against his side, soft and warm, and it took every ounce of willpower he possessed not to turn toward her, not to tilt her chin up, not to finally kiss her. Slowly, carefully, Shirley lifted her head, turning to look up at him. Their faces were inches apart. Her brown eyes were wide, questioning, hopeful. Damien's blue gaze dropped to her lips, lingered there. The movie continued playing, forgotten. The world narrowed to this moment, this woman, this overwhelming need. Damien leaned in slowly, giving Shirley every opportunity to pull away, to say no, to stop this before it started. But she didn't move. Instead, her eyes fluttered closed, her lips parted slightly. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, testing, a question being asked and answered. Then Damien's hand came up to cup Shirley's face, and the kiss deepened, intensified. Shirley's fingers curled into the fabric of Damien's sweater, pulling him closer. It was everything. Perfect and terrifying and absolutely right. Damien tasted like popcorn and promises. Shirley's lips were soft and warm, and kissing her felt like coming home after a long journey. Then a sudden loud scene from the movie, a door slamming, a character screaming, startled them both apart. They jerked away from each other, breathing hard, eyes wide. They stared at the TV for several seconds, neither quite believing what had just happened, both trying to process the enormity of it. The silence stretched, awkward, and charged. Finally, Shirley turned back to Damien. His blue eyes met her brown ones, and she saw her own feelings reflected there. Desire, confusion, hope, fear. She made a decision. Reaching out, she cupped Damien's face with both hands and kissed him again. This kiss was different from the first. More certain, more deliberate, full of all the feelings she'd been suppressing for months. Damien responded immediately, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, became hungry, desperate. All the restraint, all the careful distance, all the what-ifs and maybe-nots melted away in the heat of the moment. Damien's lips moved from Shirley's mouth to her jaw, down to her neck, and she gasped, her head falling back to give him better access. Her hands fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, needing to feel his skin, needing to be closer. Damien pulled back just enough to search her eyes, his own gaze dark with desire but also with question. "Shirley, are you sure? We don't have to—" "I'm sure," Shirley said firmly. "I've never been more sure of anything." That was all the confirmation Damien needed. He stood, pulling Shirley up with him, and lifted her into his arms. Her legs wrapped around his waist, and they were kissing again as he carried her down the hallway to his bedroom. He laid her gently on his bed, treating her like something precious and breakable, even as passion burned between them. His hands were gentle as he undressed her, his lips following the path of every revealed inch of skin. He worshipped her body with touches and kisses, learning every curve, every sensitive spot that made her gasp or moan. Shirley undressed Damien with shaking hands, marveling at the feel of him, the strength and warmth of his body. This was different from anything she'd experienced before. It was something else entirely, a connection that went beyond physical pleasure, an intimacy that touched her soul. They made love slowly, savoring every moment, every touch, every whispered word. Damien was patient and attentive, focused entirely on Shirley's pleasure, on making her feel cherished and desired. When they finally came together, it was with an intensity that left them both breathless and shaking. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, Shirley's head resting on Damien's chest, his arms wrapped securely around her. Their hearts gradually slowed, their breathing returned to normal, but neither moved, neither willing to break the spell. "I've wanted to do that for so long," Damien finally said, his voice rough. "From the first day I saw you in the hospital, awake and smiling at Tyrone, I wanted you. But I didn't think. I was afraid you wouldn't feel the same." Shirley lifted her head to look at him, her hand resting over his heart. "I was terrified," she admitted, "of my feelings, of trusting again, of risking Tyrone's happiness. But Damien, I love you. I think I've loved you for months. I was just too scared to admit it." "I love you too," Damien said, his hand cupping her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. "I love you so much, it terrifies me. I've never felt this way about anyone." They kissed again, slow and deep and full of promise. "What does this mean?" Damien asked after a long moment. "For us, I mean," Shirley was quiet, thinking, I think we should keep this quiet for a little while, just until we're sure. I want to know how this works between us before we tell Tyrone. He deserves stability, not uncertainty." "Agreed," Damien said, though he smiled. "Though I think our son is going to figure it out pretty quickly." "Our son," Shirley repeated, warmth flooding through her at the words. I like the sound of that. They talked for hours, wrapped in each other's arms, about their hopes and fears, their pasts, and their possible future. They fell asleep tangled together, more content than either had been in years. The next 2 weeks were both wonderful and excruciating for Damien and Shirley. Wonderful because they were finally together, finally able to express the feelings they'd been suppressing. Excruciating because they had to hide it from Tyrone, which proved far more difficult than anticipated. Stolen moments became precious commodities. A quick kiss in the kitchen when Tyrone was in his room. Whispered conversations late at night after the boy had gone to bed. Meaningful glances across the dinner table that they hoped appeared casual. But maintaining the facade was difficult. They'd gone from carefully avoiding each other to wanting to be close constantly, and restraining that impulse required constant vigilance. Damien found himself fighting the urge to hold Shirley's hand during Tyrone's soccer games. Shirley had to consciously stop herself from leaning into Damien when they sat together on the couch. They were both terrible at hiding their feelings, and they knew it. What they didn't know was that Tyrone had figured it out almost immediately. The Sunday after his sleepover, Tyrone had come home to find both Damien and his mother in suspiciously good moods, smiling at each other over breakfast, an almost tangible warmth between them. Their eyes were bright, their laughter came easily, and there was a new ease in how they moved around each other. Tyrone had taken one look at them and known. His scheme had worked, but he didn't say anything. He watched with amusement as they tried to act normal, as they carefully maintained physical distance, as they thought they were being subtle. It was actually kind of adorable how bad they were at hiding it. He noticed how his mom would find excuses to be in whatever room Damien was in, how Damien's eyes would automatically seek out his mother whenever she entered a room, the way they'd both blush when caught staring at each other. It was obvious. Completely, totally obvious. 2 weeks after the movie night, Shirley decided it was time. They'd established that their relationship worked, that this wasn't just physical attraction or a temporary infatuation. They loved each other, wanted to build a future together, and Tyrone deserved to know. She found her son in the living room, doing homework. Tyrone, sweetheart, can we talk? Tyrone looked up, his expression innocent. Sure, Mom, what's up? Shirley sat down beside him, trying to figure out how to phrase this. There's something I need to tell you, about Damien and me. Is it about you two dating? Tyrone asked casually, not looking up from his math homework. Shirley's mouth fell open. What? How did you? Now Tyrone did look up, grinning widely. Mom, come on. You guys are not as sneaky as you think you are. How long have you known? Shirley asked, torn between mortification and amusement. Since the day after my sleepover, Tyrone admitted. You both started acting kinda weird, and then you've spent the last 2 weeks making googly eyes at each other and thinking you're being subtle. Shirley covered her face with her hands. Oh my God. We thought we were hiding it so well. You really weren't, Tyrone said, laughing. But Mom, I'm happy for you. Both of you. Damien's great, and you deserve to be happy. Shirley pulled her son into a tight hug. You're okay with this? Really? Are you kidding? This is what I wanted all along, Tyrone admitted. Why do you think I set up that whole movie night thing? I was trying to get you two together. You little matchmaker, Shirley said, equal parts exasperated and delighted. I learned from the best, Tyrone replied. You always taught me to go after what I want. Just then, Damien appeared in the doorway. Everything okay in here? She knows that I know, Tyrone announced. And I'm totally fine with it. Actually, I orchestrated it, so you're welcome. Damien laughed, coming to sit on Shirley's other side. So we've been terrible at hiding it? The worst, Tyrone confirmed cheerfully. But I'm glad you finally got together. Does this mean you're going to get married? Both adults looked at each other, then back at Tyrone. "Let's take it one step at a time," Shirley said diplomatically, though her heart soared at the thought. "But you're thinking about it," Tyrone pressed. "Maybe," Damien admitted, reaching for Shirley's hand. "One day, if your mom will have me." "She will," Tyrone said confidently. "She's crazy about you. I can tell." Shirley laughed, pulling both her son and the man she loved close. "I am," she admitted. "I really, really am." They sat together like that, the three of them, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Shirley felt completely at peace. She had her son, healthy and happy. She had Damien, who loved her despite, or perhaps because of, all her scars and fears. She had a home, safety, security. She had a family, and 3 months later, when Damien proposed, with Tyrone's enthusiastic approval and assistance in planning, she said yes without hesitation. They were married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Laura served as Shirley's maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Tyrone stood as Damien's best man, grinning so wide his face hurt. As Damien slipped the ring onto Shirley's finger, as they exchanged vows promising forever, as they kissed to the cheers of their loved ones, Shirley thought about the journey that had brought them here. The pain, the fear, the running, the accident that had seemed like a tragedy but had turned out to be the beginning of something beautiful. She thought about second chances, about the unexpected ways life could surprise you, about the possibility of healing even the deepest wounds. And she thought about love, the fierce, protective love she had for Tyrone, and the deep, abiding love she'd found with Damien. She'd spent so long running, so long afraid. But now, finally, she could stop. She was home. They all were.